Hi, my name is Zachary Angelat, and I just wanted to go over generally, I guess, how I build websites, sort of, and kind of why I do what I do. Um, I think I may have went over some of this stuff before in prior videos with setting up Go and Echo and all that. I don't think I ever went into um, the things I use on the web pages, why I choose certain things, just kind of a all together thing in order to speed up the process, but still try to keep it as simple as possible so that when I want to pick it up next time, it doesn't turn into this big complicated thing that is like a job, sort of. So, of course, the first thing I do is use Go and I use Echo, and I went over this in other videos. But in order to put the page actually on the site and all that, a lot of times I'll set up a header footer, sort of templating kind of a thing, and I'll do folders kind of for each part that I think is going to kind of become bigger, just so that when I deal with the code, the HTML, it's kind of componentized, but it's not reusable, but it's still, you could make it reusable easily. But I do this in a way that, so it's not just one big giant, how many lines of code is this? Most of this CSS I could probably throw in a CSS file, but right now it's at 79, just kind of as is. And then there's obviously templated stuff, like all this stuff, which a lot of this comes down to, I'm using Materialize CSS, and this is the footer right here, all this stuff. And then I have some stuff for when you make it kind of mobile. So do this sort of thing, That's what this kind of JavaScript is, but I got it from the Material CSS.com website. Anyways, and that's, I think, under like navigation, navbar. Yeah, see, he just uses code. And then I use Font Awesome just for icons, and then I use Bootstrap just as, I don't know, I don't even know if I'm really using all that much Bootstrap in there, but I use it just for, I could be using more of it. Let's see, docs. I guess you gotta do the whole. But I use it just to look at different items. If I want to use them, I want to use them. If I don't, I don't. Like, I think for this I used tabs, which I actually found another CSS thing, library, which is easy to install. It's just the CDN thing. But it has some of the same stuff, but it has a little different things. It's called Semantic UI. Semantic UI, sorry. But they have, all sorts of stuff and their own icons, and I just like the idea of having a pool of stuff so that I could draw from it. Just inspirationism, kind of going along, and I'm trying to think, okay, well, what do I put here? Then, do I want animation stuff? This card, I think, was from the Semantic UI instead of the Bootstrap one, just because it just seemed a little better looking than just the simple stuff to me, maybe not to others. I gotta remove some of this, but I was just trying out different tab stuff. Why would you use all this CSS library stuff instead of like, a JS framework like React or Angular or whatever? Because I feel as though the CSS stuff is 10 times easier to use, learn, it can be inputted into a project with just one line. It doesn't really complicate things. Maybe if somebody's not familiar with the CSS, it does, in fact, complicate things. You can make an argument there. But as far as folder structuring, I think I went over this in another video where I use internal for stuff that I don't want people to use, package for stuff that makes my application kind of work. Right now, I'm just trying to serve some pages. I'm not doing some kind of crazy, logical whatever another. Maybe when I have database stuff or whatever. Right now, this is like a little portfolio site thing, sorta, kinda. Me testing out, learning things. If I ended up using Vue or Angular or whatever, I'd have to put that then inside of here as its own folder. And then it generates components with their CLIs and everything. But my thing is that when I build stuff out, not so much the CSS, but just regular stuff, and I like, what I did, let's say with this page, and I want to keep this, whatever it is. I want to be able to generate that on the back end like that. And I want it to be simple. I want it to be easy. Sure, this is trivial, but if it did something more, I don't know, if I spent a lot of time putting a form in here when you click a certain button, whatever it is, I want to just generate it with Go and just, let's say I build something that I think other people would use a lot, right? Could you do that through the components of Angular and Vue and all that? Technically, yes, but then you have to upkeep it. You have to change it to version 10, 11, and then also they have to install it and do all this stuff. With me personally, when I generate code with Go, it's usually just within, a backtick or whatever, and then I just have it kind of template out into the file. Maybe I'll have like a comment that says, card, whatever it is, I'll have it read the file and update that code. Could you technically do that in Vue and Angular and all that? Yes. Yes, you could, but the problem is then you have to run extra commands to load it all, and then it updates, but then if there's different versions, if the code changes, whatever it is, then everything just falls apart with generating code. Like, it just falls apart. And why is generating code so important, especially with a stupid resume site? Like, who cares? I mean, just, is someone else going to make it exactly like mine? Probably not. But the idea being that if you set things up a certain way, and if they are useful, and you think that someone may not set it up exactly that way, but you can generate it on the file, so that someone else can just generate their own and change things. That ensures that it's built perfectly the next time, and you don't have to worry. Like, it's done. Like, it's not researched anymore. They're not going to screw it up. It'll never change, and it's just done. So if they like the template of your HTML or however the frameworks you put into it, it's done. It's done. Inside the Go bash, you would put in, well, no, you don't. You just put the CDN or whatever it is, or generate the files, or I guess if you have to pull them down and set them up a certain way, you could easily. I'm just trying to say, if let's say you want to, someone else saw your site and they're like, oh, could you build me a site like that? If you have it generatable, one command. And then you get up the images and stuff, and maybe colors. But I'm just trying to say, the reproducibility within one command is pretty insane, and to me, it makes a lot of sense. And Go never changes, so you don't have to worry about Go's, semantic changes and all that stuff. Maybe if Bootstrap 10 completely redid everything and you really made a plug and playable program to import your own Bootstrap version, and then you have the semantics of Bootstrap that are only pertaining to before 4 or 5. Okay, but you're really going out of your way to generate code and have it fully plug and playable. Okay. But for me, I just like the idea that this is as simple as Pi. Anyone could pick it up, even if they don't totally know how to code. If it's set up like this, and even if it's generated, and you can import this or do whatever you want to do, or if you built a whole bunch of stuff on a page and you just don't want to do it again, like to get it all. It'd be 1, 2, 3, and that to me saves you time forever on. No relearning, Anyways, so I'd have these different folders. I was thinking about doing the social media one, and then I kind of realized I really could just put that right here. I'll probably add some other stuff because this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But that was just an idea, and this is sort of how I set it up, with the handler, and then public is the stuff that goes into the files, and routes is routes. But this to me is about as simple as it gets, and then using the header footer imports of the Bootstrap and those kind of things are really easy. I'm still trying to learn React. I feel like with React, and I'm not against it, it's just with everything having, prop dot style dot, I get what they're doing. They're trying to make everything reusable on the front end or server-side rendering, sure. But I suppose you can generate code this way. I just feel you're raising the bar way too high as far as if you were to generate code and go, oh well, generates these modules of reusable JavaScript, but the problem is it just looks like generic stuff, and maybe someone might learn it, but at the end of the day, they'll probably be too afraid to touch it, and that's not good. That kind of defeats the point of setting up stuff simply. You know what I mean? Could you have another folder of modules and then components, and then just say, oh, just call up these certain keywords, header, thing, and that's all you gotta do. And yeah, but you still need to run npm commands and all that, and it has to be within a specific folder, and there's like all this stuff that people have to learn. And I feel like when that bar is put up so high with learning, with whatever it is you build, the amount of adoption just plummets like none other. And on top of it, they can't take that and copy paste the code and put it in their project. To me, that's extremely important, because that's what I'm doing, right? Flat out, that's literally what I'm doing. and I don't have to think about this stuff. Like, could you say I know what every little thing means? Well, HTML and CSS, sort of, yeah. But when you start genericing it, things start to have a ridiculous amount of meaning in such a little line that, I mean, you would really have to set that up perfectly and simply to allow others to copy paste out of there and put it into their own project. You really, 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 really would have to. Because I've went through tutorials of React and Vue and all that, and a lot of times they don't work because they're prior versions. And so for me, and could someone say, well, if you have 1 hour to build a page, you're going to generate code, really? Well, my thing is, it's not so much right now, because if it's right now, okay, I'll do whatever I have to do, to do what you gotta do. But if it is generatable, because I have done and I have built stuff before, then it is a lot quicker. And so that, I guess it depends on what it is you're building and where you are in that ladder, right? Now, if you're in the grinder and you have to build graphs like report sheets, okay, it's only going to be this template. It's only going to be set up this exact way. It's only going to be, well, even then, I would generate the code, because then it would just be a lot easier. Because the more set variables you have, then the less you need to figure out, right? So why would you want things to change on your feet if you know perfectly exactly how it's going to be sped out? That's just my 2 cents. And I understand those frameworks have things that generate components and modules. But again, the idea being that still, if you generated code and you had a very defined template, it would still make your life a lot easier. Some people just like to learn it just for fun, and that's fine. Again, I'm not against learning this stuff. I'm trying to learn it myself, because I've dabbled a lot into Angular 1, way back when, Angular 2, Angular 4, Angular 6, Vue 1, 2, 3, React. I don't even remember what the first thing I did. I knew a little bit to stay away in the beginning because of how rapidly it was changing, but again, now I'm picking it up again. I just mean, you would really have to set something up smart for a very specific reason in order to use a JS framework in a manner at which you're trying to save time. Otherwise, yeah, you might be able to generate stuff, but then it just gets very quickly out of hand, and that's not cool, to me anyways. And then you have to set up all this generic code all over the joint in order to do it. And then when, let's say someone wants to copy paste it or come along, they ain't gonna want to touch it. So, you would really have to have it set up perfectly, and you really have to have a very specific reason. And if you're doing it just for fun, you're doing it just for fun. And I did videos on generating code with Go. I think I did like 2. I'm just trying to say, when I'm setting things up, I'm trying to think down the line. Maybe I get a little creative and it gets a little out of hand, but then refactoring it ought to be a 1, 2, 3 as well. Because I want it to be fun. Like I said, if you're stuck in a meat grinder and you don't get to control your area, which is, I guess, the most of the time when you have a job, then you got to do things in order to get paid. It's just, they want their old whatever, and it barely works, and it's real slow. You got to do what you got to do. But But as far as setting up something from scratch and keeping it simple and then being able to refactor it simply, and then if you build something finally that you like and you can generate it, yeah, it's fun. It's literally fun. Like fun. It's not a thing. It just becomes, and also when you generate code, you can do certain things you wouldn't normally be able to do. Like, well, I was working on building a database generator, because that the database it was originally in C, but then they just translated code into Go, and then you could compile it into your Go program. You can build something that takes the tables, puts it in a GUI as a dashboard backend thing that you wouldn't have running all the time, obviously. And then you can use that to generate more tables because you're keeping the columns into a table. Could you do that all in the database manually? Yeah, I guess, but it would be just a lot easier to maybe do a CLI or a generating code button or whatever. Is it perfect? No, because when you're setting up really complicated database stuff, everything relies upon everything else, and that turns into what that turns into. But yeah, that's generally what I do in order to make things fun and easy and simple, and I don't have to reproduce it or go through much to reproduce it. And you can turn it all into one file with Go. I went over a video on how to do that. Yeah, you have the ability to create. You have the funness factor. You have the ability to turn to one file. You have the speed. You have the reproducibility. You have the simplicity. You have the refactorability. That's simple. And you want to touch it and do it. Curiosity, I mean, that's what intelligence kind of boils down to, right? So, yeah. As far as more detailed stuff about this, I was just trying out the different CSS framework kind of stuff. They try and, I don't know, finagle some design stuff. I don't know. I built so many half websites just because I'm always like, this doesn't really look as good as I thought it was going to look. But, yeah, that's just kind of what I do, why I do it, how I do it, and, yeah. I guess if you have any questions, please let me know. All right? Thank you.